I scanned an old family photo and found a missing girl in the background. I always thought the worst thing you could find in old photos was a bad haircut or a ghost of someone you don't speak to anymore. Turns out the worst thing is evidence. 3 nights ago, I started scanning my mother's shoebox of prints because her hands shake now and she keeps saying, if it's not in the computer, it'll disappear. There were the usual things: birthdays with plastic tablecloths, Christmases where the tree leaned like it was tired of pretending, county fair snapshots that smell like sunblock even after 20 years. And then there was that roll. August 2002, a cheap disposable camera with a failing flash. We were at Pine Lock State Park, a lake ringed with pines that make their own weather. I was 13. My stepfather, Ray, taught me how to bait a hook and told me the trick to catching sunfish was patience. He said it like a lesson for life. I believed him. He was a corrections officer back then, the kind of man who wore responsibility like a uniform even out of uniform. Everyone liked Ray. He could fix a sink and a fight with the same hands. I fed the next print into the scanner and watched it bloom on the monitor. My mother on a picnic blanket, smiling like she still believed in summer, me in a neon tank top doing rabbit ears behind her. In the background, out near the gravel lot, a silver sedan with the trunk popped, and a man half inside it, hauling something heavy. In the glossy 4x6, the man was just a smudge. On a 27-inch screen at 1200 dpi, the smudge had a face. Raise. My scalp went cold first, the way it does when you almost fall on ice. I leaned in. There was sweat on his temple, a slice of sun on his forearm, and a tan line where his watch usually sat. His fingers were under something, no, someone. A bare leg, small, a white sneaker with a teal stripe, the kind every girl in town wore that year. The heel was scuffed, the lace frayed at the end like a nervous habit. My stomach flipped, slow and deliberate, the way a heavy book falls. I told myself it could be anything: a cooler, a rolled sleeping bag, a trick of light. I pinched the image, zoomed more. The sedan's trunk carpet had a stain that should have been rust but looked wet. The heavy thing had skin, goose flesh. The white sneaker had a tiny blue heart drawn on the rubber with pen. I know that heart. Every girl in my grade drew hearts on everything, including her. We all knew the story of Allie Marin. Even the kids like me who pretended not to listen when our mothers whispered at the sink. Allie was 15. She disappeared at Pine Lock at the end of that same summer, August 18, 2002, a day they said was too hot for bad things. She'd come with her cousins. She wandered toward the parking lot to get sodas. She didn't come back. The official phrases turned into wallpaper: no signs of foul play, ongoing investigation, possible runaway. Her face lived on corkboards for a while, then on the side of milk cartons, then on a Facebook page that asked the same question in 100 ways: have you seen this child? I haven't spoken her name out loud in years, but my hands remembered before my mouth did. They shook the way my mother's do now. I whispered to an empty kitchen, that's not possible, because if it was possible, then the man who walked me down the aisle, who fixed my timing belt in January, who held my mother through chemo, who with his calloused thumbs taught me how to trust a knot, that man had lifted a girl the world lost and folded her into a trunk like a bad thought. I could hear Ray in my head, the way people do when they've let a voice live there too long. Patience, Lena. Don't jump to conclusions. Don't be dramatic. Don't be dramatic is what men say right before you learn what the drama costs. I opened more scans. There were other angles, other moments. In one, the sedan trunk was closed and Ray was walking toward us with 2 drinks, a smile I suddenly didn't know how to read. In another, the silver car's plate flashed like a blind eye, 7px. Something, the rest lost to blur and glare. In a third, a reflective hubcap caught a warped image of a second man standing near the driver door. Broad shoulders, baseball cap, a shirt with block letters I couldn't make out except the first 2. The hair on my arm stood up even though the room was warm. The air smelled like the hot plastic of the scanner and old paper, and underneath it, like lake water that had followed me home. I sat very still for a long time, like prey does when it decides whether the rustle in the brush is wind or teeth. At 12:07 a.m., I closed the shoebox and put it back on the shelf. Then I did something small and treacherous. I washed my hands. Felt like confession. Felt worse. I didn't sleep. I watched the clock move in quarter inches, like mercy avoiding eye contact. At dawn, I drove to my mother's house, where mornings have smelled the same since 1998. Coffee, lemon cleaner, and Ray's aftershave, cedar and stubbornness. He was at the table doing a crossword, the newspaper folded into a tidy rectangle. "You're early," he said without looking up. "You never come early." I wanted to bring back the photos. I said. My voice was wrong in my mouth. It had gravel in it. He glanced at the shoebox and smiled in that fatherly way he's practiced for 20 years. My little archivist, he said. You didn't find any pictures of me with hair, did you? He rubbed his bald head like a good sport. My mother shuffled in wearing Ray's robe. She kissed my cheek and asked if I wanted eggs. My mother never asks if I want eggs. She puts them in front of me and dares me not to eat. People are always themselves until suddenly they're not, and then you realize how much of them has been acting for you. I'm okay, I said. Mom, when did we go to Pine Lock that summer? The one with the blue cooler. Ray answered before she could. August 17th, he said, calm as a calendar. You got sunburned because you refused sunscreen like a tiny warrior. Why? Allie disappeared on the 18th. I swallowed the date. It stuck in my throat like a battery. No reason, I lied. I took the photos back home and told myself I'd overreacted, that I was folding coincidence into a shape it didn't want to be, that the scary thing in the background was a trick of shadow and the shoe was a camp sneaker, not that sneaker, and the heart was a heart but not Allie's heart, because there are only so many shapes we draw when we're 15 and scared of being boring. At 11:40 a.m., I went to the library and fed my guilt to a microfiche machine. Old newspapers are kinder than the internet. They assume your attention, not your rage. I scrolled until the letters started to hum. There it was. Local teen missing from Pine Lock. Marin family pleads for information. August 20th, 2002. Sheriff's Department asks public to come forward with any tips. Last seen wearing white sneakers with teal stripe, navy shorts, gray Lake Days t-shirt, distinguishing mark, tiny blue heart on left shoe. I sat back so fast the chair skidded. The librarian said, "Shh," and it sounded like the whole town shushing me. I printed the article. The machine spit it out with lines like tired veins. I folded it. I unfolded it. I read it like maybe it would stop saying what it said if I used up the words. On the way home, I drove through Pine Lock like a thief. The gravel lot looked smaller. The pines taller. The lake didn't care about time. It never does. There's a spot near the lot where the hill dips and a patch of asphalt cracks in a pattern that looks like a broken wishbone. I stood on it and smelled the kind of late summer heat that makes bodies mean. A pickup truck idled near the trailhead. A woman in oversized sunglasses stared at her phone. A man threw a tennis ball for a lab that didn't bring it back. Normal things. The world is full of normal things that happen next to unforgivable ones. I took out my phone and zoomed in on the old photo, the one with the silver sedan. The scanner had captured more than my eyes did at midnight. In the reflection of the trunk lid, warped across a curve of metal, a partial plate flickered. 7px and what might be an 8. There was a dealership frame too. D something. It might have been Delaney Motor or Decker. It could have been anything except what it felt like, a breadcrumb pretending not to be. Back in the kitchen, the shoebox stared at me like a dare. I put on cotton gloves like a museum person because I wanted to pretend this was about preservation, not prosecution. I rescanned every Pine Lock photo at the highest resolution my sad little Epson would tolerate, then ran them through an open source enhancement program I use at work to fix old print ads. Pixels rearranged themselves into thicker pixels. In the hubcap reflection, the one my brain tried to slide past, there was a second face, the man with the baseball cap. The cap had block letters after all, DEPT, and below them smaller corrections. Ray's department, a staff cap he wore to mow the lawn. He used to toss it on the counter. I used to complain it smelled like sweat in laundry room. I could see the bend of the brim, the fray at the edge. I could see something else too, a hand on the driver's door. Not Ray's, bigger, the second man's. There was a ring on his pinky, a signet, a shallow square. Our town has a handful of men who wear signet rings unironically. Most of them are in photos shaking hands with donors. A cold idea slid across my spine and tucked its feet under my ribs. I opened Facebook. I typed Sheriff Douglas Kerr. Up came a campaign page with an eagle logo and a promise to keep Pine County safe and honest. The hero image was Kerr on a boat at Pine Lock, holding a base like it owed him money. On his right hand, a signet ring. Square. Shallow. The face engraved with something you can only see when the light hits right. I scrolled. In a photo from 2002, uploaded as a throwback, Kerr wore a baseball cap with depth corrections while he grilled hot dogs at the county picnic, back when he was a senior CO before he transitioned into leadership. The brim was bent in the same place. The edge was frayed the same way. I closed the laptop so fast the screen protested. I don't believe in omens. I believe in spreadsheets and oil changes and paying attention. But the house felt different, like it could hear me. At 7:15 p.m. my mother called, bright and brittle. "Sunday dinner?" she asked, like we still do that. "Ray's making lasagna. He says he'll even wear a hairnet to keep it sanitary." She laughed. Ray's voice rose in the background, mock offended. I said yes because saying no would be saying I know, and I wasn't ready to know out loud. After we hung up, I pulled the scanner's plug and put the pine lock prints in a Ziploc. I put the Ziploc in the freezer behind a bag of peas because I am still my mother's daughter and ritual is a kind of engineering. Cold slows rot. That night I dreamed the lake. Not the surface where kids throw sticks and mothers pretend not to mind. The underside with silt and lost rings and heavy secrets that reach up like weeds if you swim too close. In the dream I could breathe down there. I didn't want to. In the morning I bought a burner phone because my hands wanted to do something that felt like a plan. I made a list that started with call Allie's mother and ended with nothing because what comes after that? I didn't call her. Instead I called him. Sheriff Kerr answered on the second ring. "Sheriff's office," he said in that politician drawl small counties teach, all authority softened by folksy interest. Kerr speaking. "Hi," I said. "This is Lena Hart. I found something I think you should see." A pause. A small, almost pleasant pause. "What kind of something?" "Photos," I said. "From Pine Lock, August 2002. Another pause. "You can hear men do math through phones if you've been trained by enough of them. Why don't you swing by the office?" he said. "We'll take a look." "I'd rather meet at the park," I said before I could stop myself. "Sunset. The lot." "Why the park?" he asked. Curious the way cats are when they've already decided what the mouse will do. "Because that's where the photos were taken," I said, "and some things should be looked at where they happened." He chuckled like a man who enjoys a good sense of occasion. "All right then, Miss Hart. Sunset at Pine Lock. I'll bring a deputy, just in case it's nothing and we both feel silly." "Just you," I said, and hated how fast the words came. "Or I don't come." Another pause, shorter, sharper. "Just me," he said. "Sunset." I hung up and put my head on the table because it was the only surface not moving. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell Ray. I didn't tell my boyfriend, who believes the worst thing we've been through is a mold problem. I told the freezer because it holds the evidence and keeps its mouth shut. At sunset, I'll go to Pine Lock with photos that look like bad luck and a theory that feels like betrayal, and I'll find out whether I'm the woman who misread a memory or the woman who finally saw what the world tried to hide in the edges. Either way, I don't think I get to be anyone's daughter after this. The drive to Pine Lock took 47 minutes. Every turn of the road felt like a decision I could still unmake. The sun was dissolving into the lake by the time I pulled in. The same gravel crunch, the same smell of sap and gasoline, as if 2 decades hadn't passed. Sheriff Kerr was already there. Alone, or at least visible alone. Silver Tahoe, windows down, radio murmuring some country song about second chances. He smiled when he saw me. "Evenin', Miss Hart. Beautiful night to clear old ghosts." I held up the envelope of prints. "You said you'd want to see them yourself." "Sure do." He leaned against the hood, relaxed, practiced. "Go on then." I handed him the top photo. He studied it like a man who's seen too many photos and too few surprises. When his eyes reached the reflection on the hubcap, something tightened at the edge of his jaw, too quick for most people to catch. "Funny thing about film," he said. "Shadows can make monsters out of nothing." I said, "That's your ring." He didn't look up. "Lot of men wear rings." "Not with that engraving," I said. "The county crest. You're the only one I've ever seen with it." He smiled then, small and careful. "You've got a good eye. Your stepdad teach you that." My throat went dry. "He taught me everything," I said. "Yeah," Kerr said softly. "He was one of my best men." The lake whispered behind us. That strange, thick quiet that happens when water and fear share air. I took out my phone. I enhanced the photo. "You can see more in the reflection." He shrugged. "Sure. Email it over. We'll take a proper look." "I'd rather you looked now." He sighed, reached for it. I didn't hand it over. His smile stayed, but the warmth left it. "Miss Hart, you should be careful playing detective. Memory's a tricky witness." "Then you tell me what I'm seeing." He looked at me for a long moment, the kind of stare meant to decide if a person is as salvageable. Then he leaned in close enough that I could smell the lake on his jacket. "You're seeing something that should have stayed buried," he said quietly. "For everyone's sake." I stepped back. "You were there." He nodded just once. "We all were. The difference is some of us learned to live with it." The world tilted. The lake went still like it was listening. "What happened to her?" I whispered. He said, "Ask your stepdad." And before I could react, he dropped the photo envelope into the water. It floated for a heartbeat, then sank slow, deliberate, like paper remembering it used to be wood. Kerr straightened his jacket, tipped his hat. "Consider this handled." Then he got in his Tahoe and drove away, leaving tire tracks that looked like quotation marks. I stood there until full dark, watching ripples erase proof. When I finally walked back to my car, a note was wedged under the wiper. Typed, "Clean. Some stories end better untold. Ed." The letterhead was blank, but I knew the typeface. Ray's printer. At home, my mother was washing dishes. "You missed dinner," she said. "Ray went to bed early. Said he's not feeling himself." I wanted to ask, "When did you start printing threats?" But instead I said, "You ever think about Allie Marin?" The plate in her hand slipped a little before she caught it. "Why would I? She went missing the same weekend we were at Pine Lock." Mom didn't look at me. "That was a long time ago. Do you remember her shoes?" She froze just a fraction, then smiled too fast. "Honey, I don't remember my own shoes yesterday." I watched the back of her neck. How still it was. "Where were you when we left the park that day?" I asked. She turned then, face bright, towel in hand like a flag. "I was with you, silly. You got a nosebleed. You never remember things right." Her voice was light, but her hands were shaking. Later, I sat on my bed with the printer paper from the note, comparing the edge of the tear to the stack in Ray's office. Same rough fiber, same faint chemical smell of his ink cartridges. At midnight, I heard the garage door. Ray moving quietly. Through the half-closed blinds, I saw him load something into the trunk of his truck. A cooler. The same blue one from the photo. I followed him, barefoot, holding my keys like a weapon I didn't believe in. He drove toward the outskirts. Not fast, just steady, like a man running an errand that never ends. I tailed him down back roads until we hit the access path to the lake. He stopped near the service dock, got out, and dragged the cooler to the waterline. Moonlight caught on metal, not the cooler latch. A gun. He tossed the cooler in, watched it float, then sink. I stepped on a twig. The sound was tiny, but he turned like he'd been waiting for it all along. "Lena," he said into the dark, "you shouldn't be here." My voice barely worked. "You killed her." He exhaled. "No, I buried her. Kerr killed her. I just cleaned up after." The gun lowered slightly. "You have no idea what that man was capable of. I thought if I helped him once, he'd stop. But you kept helping," I said. He nodded. "After a while, it's not helping. It's surviving." He looked at me, the same look he gave when he taught me to tie knots, patient, certain. "Don't do what I did. Let it go." "I can't." He closed his eyes. "Then neither of us gets to sleep again." He didn't shoot me. He just stood there in the dark, holding the gun like he'd forgotten what it was for. The moonlight turned his face gray. Not old, not guilty, just finished. Then he said something that didn't fit any language I knew. "I did what she asked me to." And he walked into the lake, up to his knees, his waist, his chest. The gun vanished under the surface like a swallowed secret. I ran toward him, screaming his name, but he didn't turn around. He kept walking until the water closed over his head. The ripples took him like they take everything else, patiently. The police called it suicide. The news called it possible mental distress. Mom called it a misunderstanding with medication. I called it what it was, proof that guilt is heavier than water. They found his truck, the gun, but not the cooler. They said it could have floated anywhere. Mom cried for 3 days straight, or at least she sounded like she did. On the 4th day, I heard her humming while doing the dishes. The same melody she used to hum when Ray came home from shift. Grief doesn't hum, habit does. That's when I started looking at her differently, because the more I replayed that night, the more I realized what he'd said. I did what she asked me to. Not Kerr. Not them. Her. I started with what I had. Old photo albums, my parents' joint bank statements, the file box labeled taxes that Ray never let anyone touch. Inside were papers that smelled of damp and nicotine, receipts from 2002, 2 motel bills under my mother's maiden name, and a handwritten note in Ray's blocky script. "Meet at 9 p.m. She'll bring the girl. Keep it quiet." Underneath, A Polaroid of Allie Marin, alive, smiling, holding a soda can. My mother's car in the background. My hand started shaking so hard the photo slipped to the floor. On the back, in faded marker, someone had written, "Before it all went wrong." The next morning, I drove to Allie's mother's house, the same one from the news footage 20 years ago. Paint peeled, porch sagging under the weight of time and prayer. She opened the door slowly like she expected a ghost. Her eyes were small, red but steady. "Mrs. Marin," I said. "My name's Lena Hart. I think I have something about your daughter." She blinked at my name. "Hart, you raise girl." "Yes." Her face hardened like drying clay. She stepped aside. "Come in." The house smelled like lilies and bleach. The walls were covered in Allie's photos. Every age, every birthday, a life suspended at 15. I showed her the Polaroid. Her fingers trembled as she traced the soda can. "That was taken the day before she vanished," she whispered. "We thought someone else took it, the man who drove her home. Do you remember what he looked like?" "Sure do." She looked at me then, full and sharp. "He was wearing a wedding ring. Said his wife worked with my husband at the diner. Said her name was Marilyn, my mother's name." I drove home like a passenger in my own body. The house was dark except for the kitchen light. Mom sat at the table, a glass of wine in front of her, the shoebox of photos open again. She looked up calm. "You found it, didn't you? What did you do?" Her smile was soft, sad. "I protected us." "By killing her?" Her eyes filled but no tears fell. "She wasn't supposed to die. She was supposed to stop." "Stop what?" Mom took a long breath like pulling air through pain. "She and Ray, they were together. He was obsessed. Said he'd leave me for her. But she laughed at him, called him pathetic. He snapped, called me from the park, said she'd hit her head, that she wasn't breathing. I went to help him bury the mess he made." "You helped him." "I helped you." Her voice cracked finally. "You were 13, Lena. I couldn't let them take him away. I couldn't raise you alone. You needed a father." I stared at her, the woman who taught me to pray, to apologize, to say please and mean it. "You both buried her. And then you pretended to be normal for 20 years. She nodded slowly. "Yes, and you lived, didn't you?" That's when I realized guilt hadn't been killing her all this time. Guilt was her oxygen. I said, "Ray's dead because of you." Her lips trembled. "Ray's dead because he couldn't keep his mouth shut." That's when I saw it, a new envelope on the table, typed, clean, the same font as the note from the car windshield. "Debts don't end with the dead." It was addressed to me. I opened it. Inside, a photo, not from 2002, from last week, me standing in front of Allie's mother's house. Someone had taken it from across the street. I dropped the letter. Mom didn't flinch. "They know," she said quietly. "Who?" "The ones who made the problem go away." Kerr wasn't the only one. He was just the loudest. "You mean there are more?" She nodded. "There always are." I stepped back. "You called them." "I had to." "Why?" "To keep you safe." The kitchen clock ticked like a countdown. There was a knock at the door. 3 slow knocks, then 2 fast. She whispered, "That's them." The knocking didn't stop. 3 slow, 2 fast. Over and over, polite, rhythmic, patient. I looked at my mother. She didn't move. Her face was the stillest thing in the room. "Mom," I whispered, "what did you do?" She stared at the door like it was an old friend. "I made a call. I told them you were asking questions." "You told them?" Her voice was almost a whisper. "You were going to ruin everything. I couldn't let you destroy what's left of this family." "What's left?" I laughed sharp and wrong. "We're ghosts." The knocking stopped. Then a voice muffled through the wood. "Marilyn, it's time." Mom's hands trembled. "Promise me you won't fight them." I backed away. "Who are they?" She didn't answer. She walked to the door and unlocked it. 2 men stepped inside, both in plain clothes, not cops, not thugs. Something worse, organized calm. One was tall, with a scar under his eye. The other held a small black case. The tall one looked at me. "You must be the daughter." Mom nodded once. "She's scared. She doesn't understand." He smiled faintly. "Most people don't." The second man placed the black case on the table and opened it. Inside, a burner phone, a pen drive, and a folded piece of paper. He slid the paper toward me. "Sign this," he said. "It's a confidentiality agreement. You agree never to discuss what you think you saw. You'll receive compensation, a new life if you want it." My mother whispered, "Lena, please." The man added, "If you don't, there'll be complications." I stared at the pen, at the neat black lines of the contract. It smelled like bleach and fear. I said, "You killed Allie." He smiled without teeth. "We cleaned up an accident." "And Ray?" He shrugged. "He couldn't couldn't live with himself. You'd be surprised how many can't. My mother started crying, the quiet, breathless kind that doesn't need tears anymore. I said, I'll sign, but I want to see the file. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Fair. He handed me a tablet from the case, turned it on. Folder after folder. Scanned reports, payment logs, signed orders, photos. Not just Allie, 4 girls. All missing. All from nearby towns. Each file ended the same way. Case closed. Insufficient evidence. And at the bottom of each report, Sheriff Douglas Kerr's signature. Countersigned by the Department of Corrections liaison Raymond Hart. My vision blurred. He was helping cover it up. The man said, not helping. Handling. I looked at my mother. And you, she whispered. I told him where to take them. I thought it was temporary, that they'd come home. The tall man smiled at me. Now you understand. I did. Too well. They'd all been part of it. Kerr, Ray, Mom. Moving girls like contraband, burying them under paperwork and dirt. And for 20 years, our family dinners were their alibi. The pen felt heavy in my hand. I signed slowly, neatly, the way Mom taught me in school. The tall man nodded, took the paper, and closed the case. You did the right thing, he said. As they turned to leave, I asked, what happens now? The man with the scar said, now you forget. The door shut. Their car drove away, and I waited until their taillights disappeared. Then I picked up the burner phone. It was already on. One number saved. Agent D. Shaw, Federal Crimes Division. The pen drive was gone from the case. I had slipped it into my sleeve while signing. I met Agent Shaw 2 days later. In a diner off Route 11, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like secrets and the jukebox never works. He listened without interrupting, his eyes narrowing only once. When I handed him the drive, you realize, he said, if this is real, you've just handed us a federal conspiracy that reaches into law enforcement, corrections, and local government. I nodded. Good. Then it ends here. He studied me for a long time. Your mother. She doesn't know I'm here. He sighed. We'll need her testimony. She won't give it. Then we'll take it. I didn't ask what that meant. 2 weeks later, they found Mom. In her car. Engine running. A note on the passenger seat. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I tried to protect her. The handwriting was hers. The signature wasn't. The investigation exploded. Headlines. Indictments. A scandal the state couldn't bury this time. Sheriff Kerr died in custody before trial. 2 of his deputies vanished. Ray's name appeared in every article. Former officer turned accomplice. I didn't give interviews. I didn't answer calls. I sat in a motel off the highway, watching the country decide whether we were villains or victims. They never know the difference. It's been 6 months. The lake froze early this year. Sometimes I drive out there and park where the lot dips into the trees. When the wind is right, you can hear the ice groan long, low, ancient, like something trapped beneath it is still trying to breathe. I bring flowers, not for Allie, for everyone who got rewritten as evidence. I don't live in that house anymore. I don't scan photos either, but sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the reflection in that hubcap. 2 men, 1 girl, a moment pretending to be ordinary. And I think about how the camera didn't lie. It just waited, because truth doesn't disappear. It just waits for someone foolish enough to look closely. I found the proof I was never supposed to see, and the world punished me for not closing my eyes.